Tonight on Bridge City News, as a response to COVID-19, Ottawa has tightened its borders. The province of Alberta has suspended all classes for preschoolers all the way up to grade 12. And we find out how the city of Lethbridge is dealing with the pandemic as there were more announcements of closures today.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. The Trudeau government has banned all foreigners from entering Canada. The exceptions are for permanent residents, U.S. citizens, diplomats, crew, and immediate family members of Canadian citizens. Beginning Wednesday, only 4 Canadian airports will have incoming international flights. They're Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal.
Air operators will be formally mandated to prevent all travelers who present symptoms of COVID-19 to board a plane. Air operators will be required to complete a basic health assessment of every air traveler based on guidance from the Public Health Agency of Canada. This means that anyone who has symptoms will not be able to come to Canada. Canadian travelers will be able to get financial assistance to help them with the costs of returning home or temporarily covering their basic needs while they wait to come back to Canada.
The province of Alberta has suspended kindergarten to grade 12 classes and closed all licensed daycares amid concerns that COVID-19 may be spreading throughout various communities. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says 2 of the most recent cases are not travel-related, and public officials are not sure how they caught the virus. Hinshaw said there were 17 additional cases of COVID-19 detected over the past 24 hours, including 7 who appeared to have contracted the virus at a Calgary gathering. There are now 56 reported cases in Alberta, but so far, none here in Lethbridge. In an effort to help contain the spread of COVID-19, the Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta is adjourning all scheduled trials across the province and will only be hearing already started jury trials and emergency matters, including bail and detention reviews. The City of Lethbridge has closed down all recreation and culture facilities in light of COVID-19. City staff say they are doing everything in their power to make sure that everyone in Lethbridge is safe.
The decision is based on several factors, including the Edmonton and Calgary zones seeing the spread of COVID-19 through community transmission. Even though we do not have a confirmed case in Lethbridge at this time, we are taking these steps to be proactive in helping to prevent the spread.
Again, it's business as usual for our staff, and we are ensuring that there's our goal is to ensure we have those critical services that the residents always expect to receive, but we may be having to redeploy staff in a different way depending on how deep this goes in terms of our capacity.
So we want to make sure people are monitoring themselves and making some really good choices out there in terms of this is something that's going to go on for quite a bit of time. So we want to make sure that we just work like you normally do. Make sure you have your 72-hour kit available for you and some supplies at home. If you start experiencing severe symptoms, shortness of breath, chest pain, those types of events, call us. We will be there. We will take care of you.
Also of note today that Exhibition Park is closed to the public, as are CASA and SACPA. The Lethbridge Public Libraries and various pools, including the Stan Siwick Family Pool, are also closed. The Court Van Ray YMCA in Lethbridge is also officially closed now until further notice.
A lot of our members are concerned about what happens with my membership, what happens to the program registrations that I already have. All members of the YMCA right now, their memberships are considered to be on hold. That means no new charges. Your membership stays active in the system. There's no penalties. You don't have to cancel your membership. You will remain in the system. The second fold of this is we're still deciding what's going on with our spring programming and summer programming, which is coming up, as well as the programming that's ongoing right now. And we will proactively contact all of our program registrants, whether you're a member or a non-member. We'll call you and let you know what's happening, update you on your account.
In response to the current COVID-19 situation in our province, Lethbridge County is taking steps to reduce the risk to staff and the public. They are closing offices in Lethbridge, Picture Butte, and Coaldale until further notice. In an email, the county says if you have to pay utilities, you can do so through their drop boxes, pay at your bank, mail a check, or you can pay online. The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen has no intention of shutting down. Bill Genther, the executive director, says they have implemented several modifications to protect staff, volunteers, and their clients. But more importantly, he says, he's learned to trust God.
We cannot have more than 50 people gathered. That's fine. What we'll do is we'll take the 50 minus the volunteers, and that's the number of guests that will enter our building at one time. It will mean that our volunteers will need to be here a bit longer because we can't feed 100 at a time. We feed 30 or 40 at a time based on the number of volunteers. But overall, I would say we will continue to do this because it's what we're asked to do. We are not afraid. We want to be very aware of what could happen, but we'll do whatever we can. But we trust in God totally. We know this is His ministry, and He will not in any way damage this ministry to the poor. We will continue to do it. It may end up that we feed like 15 people at a time. So be it. If it's one at a time, we'll do that. So I guess what I really want to emphasize is that we will continue to do what we're doing. We'll adjust accordingly, but we have trust in God that He will bring us through this like He has everything else in the past.
Many in our province have been attacking Premier Jason Kenney and the UCP, saying that now is not the right time to be cutting nurses' jobs and funds from healthcare. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf stopped by our studio recently and said when it comes to funding for healthcare, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
There haven't been any cutbacks at this point in time in healthcare. The budget has actually gone up by $200 million this year from last. And we haven't made any of those changes. Those changes are set to take place March 31st, moving forward into the new fiscal year.
Catch my full interview with Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf discussing healthcare and if there's any word if the province will be shutting down or moving our city supervised consumption site. That is coming up after business news. The province announced today that it will introduce motions to speed up the passing of budget legislation necessary for frontline spending to combat COVID-19. The motion will provide funding to keep frontline services operating while allowing for flexibility in terms of adjourning and recalling the legislature. In a statement, Health Minister Tyler Shandro said, these motions will give us the adaptability to ensure our government is able to provide money for care where it is most needed by allowing for an additional $500 million in spending for frontline healthcare support. Canada's top public health official says Canadians need to act now to curb the spread of the novel form of the coronavirus. Dr. Theresa Tam says public health advice and decree can only go so far, and people need to work together to stay ahead of the curve.
We now have 4 confirmed cases among the passengers repatriated from the Grand Princess or in quarantine at CFB Trenton. Canada has tested close to 25,000 individuals to date. Internationally, Europe is the epicenter of the outbreak. With cases rapidly increasing in Canada, particularly in British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta, our window to flatten the curve of the epidemic is narrow. We all need to act now. COVID-19 is a serious public health threat. While this disease is particularly serious for older adults and medically vulnerable people, all ages are at risk.
Public health officials in BC now say their provincial total is up to 73. BC's provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, says BC is adapting a new testing strategy for COVID-19, noting more cases are expected in the coming days. She says not everyone needs to get tested, even if they have recently traveled outside of Canada.
First of all, we have 9 new cases that were identified in the last day here in British Columbia, so that brings us to a total of 73 confirmed cases. It's not essential, and we don't need to test everybody who's been outside the country, even if they have mild illness. So we need to adapt, and we are adapting our testing strategy to respond to the situation that we do have here in BC now. For most people, you do not need a test. And we want to make sure that testing is available for all who do need it. And the focus will be on ensuring that we will continue to test people in active investigations and cluster outbreaks, because that's how we determine how this virus is spreading in our community.
Here are some up-to-date numbers of the amount of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Canada. As you heard, Dr. Bonnie Henry mentioned in BC, there are 73 there. Alberta has 56 confirmed cases, 7 in Saskatchewan, 7 in Manitoba, 177 in Ontario. Quebec now has 39 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus. There are 6 in New Brunswick, 3 in Nova Scotia, 1 in Prince Edward Island, and 1 in Newfoundland and Labrador. Globally, there are over 175,000 cases with 6,717 deaths. Fortunately, close to 78,000 people have since recovered. You've heard of the expression supply and demand? Well, check this out. Apparently, at a home hardware store in Barrie, Ontario, they were allegedly selling hand sanitizer for $15.99 a bottle. Apparently, a few days earlier, the same bottle was selling for just over $5. There was also a couple in Vancouver, Manny Ranga and Violetta Perez, who allegedly were selling containers of Lysol wipes online and made a tidy profit of $100,000. Health officials in Montreal say civil security and public health workers will be at the Trudeau International Airport, reminding travelers that they must self-isolate upon returning to Canada.
We're going to have teams on the field that are going to be there 24 hours a day because we have flights coming in all day long to reinforce those recommendations. What are the recommendations? We're asking every travelers, Quebecers, Canadian, or visitors to stay at home for 14 days. This means you do not go to work, you do not go to school, you do not go in public places, you do not have visitors.
Now, we've brought you some stories of people who are panic buying or buying for profit, whether it's Lysol wipes, food, or toilet paper. U.S. President Donald Trump is urging the public to stop hoarding groceries, telling Americans to take it easy and relax. Trump's message comes as store shelves across the United States have been picked bare as people are stockpiling supplies.
You don't have to buy so much. Take it easy. Just relax. People are going in and they're buying more. I remember, I guess during the conversation, Doug of Walmart said that they're buying more than they buy at Christmas. Relax. We're doing great. It all will pass. The folks that we spoke to, they've done a fantastic job. They're going to meet the needs of the public. They're going round the clock if they have to, and they're committed to the communities where they're serving and which they serve so beautifully and have for a long time. And they're buying a lot of additional things to sell. But again, they actually have asked me to say, could you buy a little bit less, please?
Fears about the coronavirus are gripping the world. Right now, you might be feeling like getting in your bed or maybe hiding under the covers. Fortunately, there are timely messages out there that can help you get through this and whatever else might be concerning you. Here's some words of hope from a local pastor.
Psalm 91 verse 1 says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge, my fortress, my God. In Him I will trust." And when we spend that time with Him, in His presence, when we connect daily with Him, then He says, this is the promise of that. He says, "Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence." And that's what we're dealing with, pestilence.
The Christian Institute has welcomed the news that the British government has rejected a woman's appeal to allow gender-neutral passports to be issued. The case was originally heard in 2018 and dismissed by the High Court. As we hear from Rachel Gillies from the Christian Institute, the Court of Appeal has now upheld that verdict.
A woman who claims to be non-gendered has lost her appeal to force the government to issue gender-neutral passports. Christy Alan Kane is female, but believes it is discriminatory that the Passport Office does not permit her to use an X on her passport. Her case was dismissed by the High Court in 2018, and the Court of Appeal has now upheld that verdict. Lady Justice King said the court finds that there was no positive obligation on the state to provide an X marker in order to ensure the right of the appellant to respect for private life. The Christian Institute's Kieran Kelly welcomed the news.
It's a good thing that this ruling has been upheld. A passport is an important document, it's a legal document, and to falsify such a document by putting an X instead of an M or an F to denote your legal sex would have been a serious mistake. And it also would have perpetuated this myth you can somehow pick and choose your biological sex.
We had lots of sunshine and warmer temperatures today, and the meltdown has begun. But how long will it last? I'll have all of the weather details coming up. We had a lot of sunshine again today, but some slushy road conditions. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near -10. Tomorrow, a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 2 degrees. Wednesday, the snow returns with the mercury dropping to -6. Thursday, overcast and a high of only -7. A high pressure system returns on Friday, bringing lots of sunshine and a high near -2. Even warmer at 4 degrees on Saturday. Sunday, just a few clouds are on tap and a high near 5 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 6 degrees and an average low of -7. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1985 at 19 degrees, and the record low, a chilly -33 in 1943. Sunrise was at 7:42, sunset at 7:38. Let's see how things are shaping up across the country for tomorrow. Expect a mainly cloudy day, but a high of 12 in both Victoria and Vancouver, BC. A chance of flurries and high of -1 in Calgary. Snow and -3 degrees for Edmonton on Tuesday. Increasing clouds and -3 for Regina. Light snow and -6 for Saskatoon tomorrow. A mixture of sun and cloud and a high of -7 for Winnipeg. Rain and 7 degrees is on tap for Toronto. Showers and 6 for both Ottawa and Montreal. Over in the Maritimes, expect rain mixed with snow and a high of 2 degrees for Fredericton, New Brunswick. Increasing clouds and +1 for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Charlottetown, PEI should be mostly cloudy and 2. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, it should be mainly sunny and a high of -3 for tomorrow. With the COVID-19 pandemic closing businesses and causing layoffs, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pledges that Ottawa will spend big to help Canadians get through it.
Our focus right now is on ensuring that Canadians who are staying home from work have enough money to be able to buy groceries and pay their rent. These are measures that we will be moving forward with in the coming days to ensure that people can keep themselves and their loved ones safe and healthy. We will, of course, be moving towards supporting businesses as we already have with significant access to credit of $10 billion and other measures to ensure that in the short term we are able to continue to support each other.
A group of top 30 Canadian business executives is calling on business leaders to do their part in helping to slow down the spread of the coronavirus. They say companies should facilitate work-from-home arrangements for employees and urge workers to halt all non-essential travel. The group that includes CEOs of Canada's biggest banks says the fight against COVID-19 will have a huge impact on businesses in the short term. But it says international experience shows social distancing is the only effective method to weathering the storm and will hasten the recovery. Rogers Communications is extending free unlimited Canada-wide long-distance calling to all mobile customers of its Rogers, Fido, and Chatter brands. The move will be in effect until April 30th as part of its response to the coronavirus outbreak. The Rogers and Fido brands will also waive roaming fees outside of Canada with postpaid plans and for small business owners until the end of April. The change is among several measures announced by telecommunications companies, including TELUS and Bell, since officials increased their COVID-19 containment efforts last week. Stocks lost 8% in morning trading on Wall Street today as huge areas of the North American economy shut down due to the coronavirus outbreak.
Enough stocks open to trigger the circuit breaker that we went into circuit breaker mode. That's a good thing. That's been instituted years ago, basically to give a pause into the market, let people sort of regroup and see where everybody wants to be. And we reopened at 9:45. Smooth and orderly, smooth and orderly. This is the NYSE. There are humans here backstopping your money, so that's important to know. The Fed on Sunday lowered the interest rates down a full point. The market had a huge rally on Friday into some hopefully positive news, corralling the medical community and the financial community and the administration to basically get a handle on what's going on. That was not enough. They lowered the rates on Sunday. Market is telling us that they're not that happy with that.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The markets took a beating again today thanks to sell-offs triggered by the coronavirus. The TSX was down 1,355 points to 12,360. The Dow was down 29.97 to 20,188. The S&P 500 was down 324 points to 2386. And the Nasdaq was down 970 points to 6904. Oil was down $3.04 a barrel to 28.69. Natural gas was down 6 cents to $1.80. Gold was down 62 cents to $13.49 an ounce, and silver was unchanged on the day at $12.91 an ounce. Wheat is at $237 per metric ton, barley's at $232, canola's at $464, and corn is at $259 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $373 to $99.98. Feeder cattle were down $450 to $116.78. Lean hogs were down $240 to $56.58. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 71.34 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Trudeau government has banned all foreigners from entering Canada. Now, the exceptions are for permanent residents, U.S. citizens, diplomats, crew, and immediate family members of Canadian citizens. Beginning Wednesday, only 4 Canadian airports will have incoming international flights. They are Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. Canadian health officials report of the 177 COVID-19 cases in Canada, only 5 so far have been resolved. The Alberta government says it will be helping business owners manage through these tough times with the COVID-19 virus. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Woods Homes Emergency Youth Shelter, The Core, helps families struggling with parent-adolescent conflict by providing crisis support. The shelter is open from 5 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. every day. They also offer professional counseling, referrals, and housing first supports throughout the day. For more information, visit woodshomes.ca or call 1-800-563-6106. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a non-profit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or email Lethbridge Legal Guidance at telus.net. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help serve hot meals, assist with Foot Friday, and help support incoming donations. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf is our guest in studio here today. He's here to discuss provincial politics and issues that impact us right here in southwestern Alberta. Nathan, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you, Hal. Great to be here.
It's good to have you here as well, Nathan, but during some trying times, COVID-19, a lot of Alberta's in lockdown, a lot of the country and even the world right now, it's impacting things. The First Minister's meeting in Ottawa, Premier Jason Kenney was supposed to head there to talk with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about a possible financial aid package to help us here in Alberta. How much money are we talking about?
Well, I think the Premier went there to talk to the Prime Minister. Obviously, that meeting didn't quite take place in the way we would have liked to have seen, and we wish the Prime Minister and his wife the best of health and a quick recovery. But to understand how they want to respond economically to the stimulus, what we need here in the short term and what we need here in the long term. Some things have been announced, and it's a good start. But I think those conversations still need to take place so we can totally lay out the plan going forward.
Bottom line, let's talk numbers though. How much are we looking for? $2.5–3 billion here in Alberta? What do we need?
Well, that remains to be seen, to be completely honest. I know in terms of equalization, we were looking for that cap to be lifted. That number was $2.4 billion to help with the economy. COVID-19 is something a little bit different. Obviously, we're looking to help those employed, those self-employed, those who have to stay home from work. So how do we address that? And I think that's where we're looking for the federal government to take a lead. They have so far committed about $11 billion for the country. We need to see exactly how much of that will land up in Alberta.
So how are we going to help a lot of business owners and individuals who have to self-isolate for those 14 days, however long the period is, if they have COVID-19?
Yeah, if they have COVID-19, the recommendation at this point is to self-isolate for 14 days, just to make sure that the incubation period has passed before they come out and are in contact with other people of the public. And 2 weeks without a paycheck can really stress a lot of people. So I know that the mandatory 1 week waiting time for employment insurance has been waived. But for those who are self-employed, obviously we need to look at something a little different. Not sure if that's been fully decided yet, but those are conversations that we need to have.
How about some help for business owners who've been impacted by $30 per barrel for oil right now? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know with the budget, you were hoping for maybe around $58 a barrel.
Yeah.
Maybe next year or a couple of years from now, $63 a barrel. We're talking $30 a barrel here, Nathan.
I know. It's been drastic where the price was last fall or the peak last year to now it's almost in half. Obviously, drastic measures need to be taken.
Does that mean more cuts?
At this point, the Premier has indicated that is not the direction that we go. To destabilize further our economy and our public sector, how does that help anybody? I think that we want to get rid of that uncertainty. We want to add some stimulus. We want to add jobs to the economy. We want to stabilize things and get rid of any fear and uncertainty. Some of those decisions obviously are yet to be made with the Premier having been in Ottawa recently, as well as some of the key ministers. Those conversations will be taking place this week. We will be doing some direct steps to help those in Alberta.
A lot of people I've been speaking with as well in southwestern Alberta are concerned with the fact that there are cutbacks, especially when it comes to the frontline healthcare professionals, a lot of our nurses, at a time when we have COVID-19 running rampant. Like, the timing couldn't be worse. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, there haven't been any cutbacks at this point in time in healthcare. The budget has actually gone up by $200 million this year from last, and we haven't made any of those changes. Those changes are set to take place March 31st, moving forward into the new fiscal year. Again, no changes for outright layoffs for nurses. There is a little bit, a very, very tiny bit, 1/3 of the natural retirement rate of nurses to maybe not fill those positions. Again, this is not about reducing the workforce. This is about optimization, efficiencies, and any savings that can be found in the system will be poured right back into frontline healthcare. So we do not want that rumor, that false narrative to go out that we're getting rid of positions. We absolutely are not. We want to stabilize our healthcare.
So you're saying there's some misinformation going out there right now?
I believe so, yes.
By another party, perhaps? A nameless party?
All I'm in control of is the messages my office puts forward in my party, and we try to respond to that. And it is difficult with every rumor able to go on Twitter or whatever social media. Things can take fire, but I just ask people to verify the source. Verify the source before they go too far. There's lots of irons in the fire, and there's lots of different perspectives out there to try to get public opinion or emotion on different people's side. But we want to have serious, helpful conversations, not ones that aren't based on fact.
The NDP opposition actually came up with a suggestion to put an income replacement fund in place to help self-employed people or anyone not able to access employment insurance funds for anyone who may have to self-quarantine. Your thoughts on that?
I actually think it's a reasonable suggestion. Obviously, I'm not in charge of that discussion or that decision, but I would be happy to see that decision and that discussion take place. Obviously, the Premier, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Labour and Immigration, as well as a number of others should be part of that. But again, if it's a good idea and worth merit, I think we'll have that conversation.
Now, you have some recent appointments as well you want to share with our viewers that you're celebrating. What are they?
Yeah, a number of appointments. The first one being I have recently been named the chair to the Standing Committee for Alberta's Economic Futures. So that's, again, just recognition of Lethbridge and area, and that we have a voice and a place to play in the Alberta's economic future, particularly with our agricultural sector, tourism, food processing. We are seeking that recognition, and I'm very proud to have this position on behalf of Lethbridge and represent the people there. The second one, I was named the chair of a provincial task force on student transportation or busing. And obviously, I think everybody in Lethbridge and in Southern Alberta knows that student busing is pretty important. A lot of cost, a lot of kilometers, and nobody wants kids on the buses for hours and hours to and from school. So we're really setting forward a task force to talk to pertinent stakeholders, have that discussion. How do we do this better? And I'm really looking forward to that again. And again, that recognition goes to Lethbridge. Lethbridge School Division 51, the Holy Spirit School Division in Lethbridge. Their collaborative efforts for years have set them as the benchmark across a province. It's their hard work that's being recognized here. So I'm not taking any personal credit for that, but I'm very pleased on their behalf to take that model forward as something that the province can learn from.
Now, the supervised consumption site is still a big issue here in our city, as it is in many cities across Alberta here. And the government released a report talking about some concerning numbers as to the effectiveness of some of these sites. Associate Minister of Health, Jason Lewan, noted the near absence of referrals for treatment and recovery, and he pointed out to the Lethbridge South Country Treatment Centre at only 45% capacity, so a whole lot of unused beds.
Yeah.
What really needs to change in the approach so that the people who need the help get the help?
Well, I think the approach, we've said it before, needs to be focused on treatment and recovery and not strictly on harm reduction. That is a step in the whole process. But we do need to see that the stream of people moving towards treatment and recovery is happening. Obviously, that report highlights that that was not happening in all cases. We need to see that happening. I will be having a meeting with the Associate Minister very, very soon, maybe even this week, to further discuss not just Lethbridge, but sites across the province. We need, and the people in Lethbridge have been waiting for a long time for two things. One is validation that they've been heard, which I think this report does. It does share the concerns and the direction we need to move. And the second thing they've been waiting for is a response. Now that we know this, where are we going from here? What is happening?
And that's what I want to ask. What is going to happen? Will it be moved? Will it be shut down? A lot of people want to know.
A lot of people want to know, and I don't have all those answers. Again, I'm not part of that final decision, although I have input into it. I will be speaking with the Associate Minister about my thoughts on how we address that for the most significant healthy impact, not only for those individuals that are using that site, but also for the businesses and community surrounding it. I think there's some very clear recommendations that we can move forward on. I hope to finalize those with the Associate Minister soon and share them with Lethbridge.
There was also an audit involving this supervised consumption site.
I think that's prudent.
With some interesting numbers too.
There's some interesting numbers. I haven't seen the final report yet on that audit, so I don't want to comment to get ahead of things. Arches has been extremely cooperative with the members doing that audit, and we'll let the numbers speak for themselves, and I won't speculate on what they may or may not show.
So the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce recently had an event. Some of the ministers were in town, and you joined them as well. Yeah. What were some of the concerns you've been hearing from the business community here in Lethbridge?
I think predominantly there's two things. One is the recognition of our agricultural sector. We all know that oil and gas is the number one economy in Alberta. We've known that for a long time, wherever people sit on that issue. But those down here, we're focused on agriculture. So they would like to see a little bit more of that plan, that recognition and stimulus for that industry and support for that industry. So I think that was clearly heard by the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Finance. And the second one was Lethbridge did not have very much significant capital dollars spent. There is a continuation of the promise for the $11 million for seniors supportive housing. So that's a good thing.
Another bridge?
That is not in this at all.
Right.
So
okay.
Again, there's been miscommunication on that. That was a platform promised by the NDP. It was not put on their capital plan, so there was not honored in our capital plan. Mm-hmm. That is something we need to discuss. We do have the Minister of Transportation committed to come down and drive Highway 3 before summer as we plan for that expansion and how we're going to tackle that.
At the twinning, right?
The twinning,
yeah.
Which the bridge is part of. Right, that's part of that whole package. But there's sections to the east, sections to the west through Crow's Nest Pass and the bridge. How do we tackle that? You know the old adage, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? But beyond that, there are needs for Lethbridge. We have been very, very fortunate in the past decade. Huge amounts of provincial dollars, federal dollars, and private investment. And we've been very, very fortunate for that. This year is a down year. I need Lethbridge to know that I continue to advocate. That is significant. We are willing to play our part in the province. We do see the bigger picture and the context that as we step back, there will be communities that go a year or two without. We recognize that. There are still things we need. We need to move ahead with some airport renovations, and we need to move ahead with Exhibition Park to support our ag sector and attract that private investment from outside the province that we're dearly looking for.
So you don't have the minister portfolio, Nathan, but as a backbencher, how often do you get the opportunity to address the issues at the ledge and bring them to the premier, in Edmonton?
I have that opportunity with ministers.
Once or twice a week? Like how often?
Ministers, I'm speaking to ministers every day, tell you the truth. And often, ironically, it's the bumping into them in the hallway or in the cafeteria, so to speak, or at another meeting where you get 5 minutes to have that one-on-one time. There is time within the legislature sitting itself.
QP, right?
Well, QP, you have to sit in your chair, but committee of the whole or at breaks where you get the opportunity to speak to them about some of these significant issues. The premier obviously is a little bit more challenging to get time with him, but he is amazing in his commitment, in his knowledge level of each region and what matters to us. But I mean, again, this week he's in Ottawa, and in the past you've seen him take time to go to Washington or Texas or New York, spending a considerable amount of effort on Alberta's behalf for our greater economy.
Has he been tested for COVID-19? All that traveling, man.
All that traveling.
That's dangerous.
It's possible. I think
Right?
I think he's been in Canada since the outbreak. I think he's been very careful and aware of that. If someone is more dedicated to the time spent in office, I don't know who that is. He literally spends 14 to 18 hours a day, if not more, working on behalf of all Albertans for our better future.
Some people I speak with across southern Alberta are not happy with some of the park closures or even the partial park closures or handing it over to private enterprise, businesses to run the parks. How do you respond to that? Because, I mean, the busy summer season is coming up, the camping season, and we like to camp here in Alberta.
We do. So there's a couple things. This needs to be looked at from the big lens of just budget optimization and efficiency. There are only 10 parks in the entire province that are going to be closed, and predominantly because they were used so little, like less than 40 people in a year, some less than 20 people in an entire year. So that we're not taking those parks out of circulation. There are 10 further parks that are going to have partial closures where they may not be overnight camping, but they'll still have day use. Again, for the same reason, optimization to use the limited resources we have, officers and maintenance, in parks that dearly need it. There are further 164 that we want to continue to be operated as parks, but we're seeking partnerships with municipalities or First Nations groups or private operators to run. Again, this is not about making a profit. This isn't about even cost recovery. People should be able to enjoy their parks without having to worry about the cost to that. This is about optimization and realizing that some local needs and local insight into these areas far more effective than the provincial force. And again, this represents like 0.3% of the land mass of all Alberta parks.
What about Park Lake Provincial Park?
So that's one of the 164, so it's still meant to be open, and we're just seeking some partnership to help manage that. Again, using the resources in areas that we need to, and we want to see people use Park Lake. But again, that's where local interest can really address that need and partner with the provincial government and make sure that people have the experience they want, and we're able to maintain it and utilize it in a way that doesn't cost, again, Alberta taxpayers undue amounts of money.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks for joining me in studio today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Hal.
Agriculture is still a very big part of the Canadian economy, although the sector is facing challenges in a global market. Farming and ranching are also becoming more and more expensive and high-tech these days. Joining me now to talk about it is Ken Coles. He's the Executive Director of Farming Smarter. Welcome back to Bridge City News, Ken.
Well, thanks for having me, Hal.
Why don't you explain to our viewers, first of all, what is Farming Smarter all about?
You betcha. Farming Smarter is a group that's focused on farmers in southern Alberta. We're a nonprofit organization with a charitable status, and basically we're trying to change the way people farm. We're doing that through conducting research. We do small plot research, field scale research out on the farm, and we try to adapt innovative ideas, and basically any way we can do a better job of farming, we want to be able to enable that through science. And not only are we going to share the work that we're doing, but we're going to try to build a stage for all of the other scientists and agriculturalists out there that are working on better practices so that we can get that information out to farmers so that it's being used and it's practical and applied and being impactful.
What are some of the new innovative ideas that are really helping today's farmers here in southern Alberta?
Well, there's so much going on in just about every aspect of agriculture. Just keeping up to date with the new things is a challenge. So there's new innovations in marketing. There's new innovations in what types of crop to grow and how to grow them, how to collect data, how to manage information. Lots of different things going on that will both complicate and help do a better job with their farming businesses.
Are farmers maybe considering different crops as opposed to traditional wheat, barley, maybe even canola because of the China ban, the ban on Canadian canola in China? Are they maybe considering like cannabis or hemp or something
actually,
unique?
All farmers, I think, across the province are always looking for new cropping options. So that's actually one of our main programs within Farming Smarter. We call it the Novel Crops Program. So we'll test out new crops like cannabis or hemp, things like quinoa. We've played around with things like camelina, all types of different crops that are grown in other parts of the world. We want to see how do they work here in southern Alberta. So there's a couple of things. You got to figure out how well does it grow under these conditions, and the other thing is there actually a market for it? So that's one of the challenging things with bringing in new crops is are we going to be competitive with other parts of the world, or is it something that we can have a niche and actually make some money at? So that's definitely a good question. Southern Alberta in particular, with irrigation, we have a lot of high value crops and a way more cropping options that are out there. So it really, I think, expands what we can grow, and it's really kind of exciting and interesting too.
So what are the soil conditions like? I know we haven't had a lot of snow so far this winter.
Yep.
So maybe are we going to have a real dry spring?
Well, I sure hope not, because we've basically come through 3 years of drought now. I actually think soil conditions are a little bit better this year than last year, because we have actually had some really good fall moisture. Remember, back in September we had a big dump of snow, and January too. And the good part is that it wasn't frozen. The soil wasn't frozen, so the moisture was actually able to get in. So I don't think we're in fantastic conditions, but definitely better starting off point than last year. And it's really important too what precipitation we get in the growing season. So everybody's hopeful. This is one of those, we need to have a good year, because it's been a tough go the last few years.
What are some of the hardier crops the farmers are planting right now?
In the dryland scenario, wheat is still a staple crop, so all of the wheats are doing well. The pulses are a shallower rooted crop, so they don't need it quite as much moisture, but they're quite heavily or readily adapted to a dryland scenario. It's just, it can't be zero rain. We need to have something.
Where does your funding come from? Is it private sector and government?
Yeah, so Farming Smarter actually has a broad range of funding sources. We're very much project-based, which means if there's a research project, we have to apply for a grant. So right now, we've got a really good spread between the provincial government, the federal government. We do get some support from producer-grower groups, so there's some checkoffs for growing different crops. Those groups will support WGRF, the Western Grains Research Foundation is another group that helps support our projects. We generate revenue from sponsorship, from our events that we put on, and we also do industry contracts. So we'll do contract research for some of the agrochemical companies, nutrient companies, and you name it. So it's quite a diverse range of funding, and that's really my job, to make sure that we are achieving what we're set out to do in our vision, and building a stable base of support for what we do.
Ken, the budget came out recently here with the Alberta government. Mm-hmm. They've talked about a lot of cutbacks. Has that impacted your business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is probably the most significant change to supporting agriculture that I've seen in my career. So we're looking at a significant reduction in support for agriculture, but mainly in really big cuts towards the provincial government itself. So their ability and capacity to do work is going to change quite significantly. If anything, that's going to put pressure on us to grow more, to be able to pick up some of the work that's being done. At this point, we really don't know yet exactly what's happening, but as far as our organization is concerned, especially given the different sources of funding that I just mentioned, we're definitely in good shape. If anything, we're going to grow.
Farming Smarter's had a long-time relationship with Lethbridge College. Mm-hmm. Now, you just signed a 15-year memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Well, I'm actually really excited about that, and it's something that we've been working towards probably for the last 10 years. And Southern Alberta is such a hugely impactful, important piece of the ag economy. In fact, we did some work recently that showed that our area, which is basically south of Highway 1, represents 57% of the gross revenue in agriculture. Oh. So there's so much that happens in Southern Alberta. Because of that, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of demand for work and entrepreneurship. So part of the reason we're working with the college is to be able to, work off each other's strengths and be able to serve this demanding industry. Like there's so many cool crops and businesses going on. We can't even come close to be able to service them all on our own. So the partnership allows us to put our resources together, to put our heads together, to build capacity, to be able to take advantage of some of these great opportunities that irrigation allows us to do. And just because agriculture is important, the Lethbridge College also sees that as a really important way of building human resources. So now we can partner on research, but we can partner on education as well. So we have all of these young students coming in. They're about to launch a new degree program in applied technology. Great opportunities for them to come learn about research and all the things that we're doing on our front. And the more we talk, the more we realize that there's opportunities to work together.
So if there are some young people that are considering going into farming, Ken, outside of a lot of startup capital, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think, your brain is your biggest resource. And I think the more knowledge that you can achieve through learning, the better off you're going to be.
So do your research beforehand, right?
Yeah, and also pick an area that you're going to be passionate about. And I think that's there's so many people passionate about agriculture, so I think there's something for everyone in agriculture, and I think there's actually a lot of jobs in agriculture too. So I'd always encourage students to look at programs like that at the college. If I was starting over again, I'd be looking at this new degree coming out of the Lethbridge College.
Now, farming has become a very high-tech business these days. Is there a measurable difference in success rates when you compare farmers staying up to date as opposed to maybe old-school farming techniques?
Kind of $1 million question there, isn't it? I don't think there is a way to measure it. I believe that there's innovators and laggards in every aspect of agriculture. So you can be way advanced in one area and a complete laggard in another, but it might not matter. I personally believe that someone that's dedicated to learning and always challenging the accepted practices is eventually going to be ahead of the game. But agriculture is really, the people that win it are the ones that can manage risk. So I do believe that the strengths in being able to create a farm system that best manages risks is the ones that are going to be successful.
Is there any progress being made on herbicide-resistant weeds here in the prairies?
That's also a tough question. There's progress, but there's also a lot of challenges that are increasing. So herbicide resistance is continually increasing. It's kind of like, that old Jurassic Park movie, Nature Finds a Way. Right. As we continue to do the same things, it adapts, and that's what we're seeing. More and more herbicide resistance is developing. So in that sense, we're losing the game. Is there ways to manage it? Yes. And in some senses, we're coming up with ways to deal with problems quite positively, but it's one of those ones that will continue to be a challenge for farmers moving forward and will require more and more effort and more complex approaches to dealing with it.
Are there certain ways you can test the weeds to see if they are herbicide resistant?
There's certainly ways to test them, both in your field. If you spray your field and certain weeds survive when they shouldn't, that's actually a pretty good test. You can also take samples and send them off to labs for resistance testing. So not sure if that program will continue to exist given the cuts that are going on right now, but I sure hope so. But certainly it is about paying attention to what's going on. If you're seeing strange patterns or patches of weeds, and in the case of glyphosate-tolerant kochia, you can actually see strips of weeds that are left behind from the tumbleweeds rolling across the field. So certainly, yes, you can.
So since the Chinese had that Canadian canola ban, the recent stats from Stats Canada says Canada has lost $1 billion worth of business. So the canola farmers that you've talked to, tell me about some of their struggles right now.
Well, this becomes a challenge in revenue. The price of canola has been hampered by those trade restrictions, and then that forces farmers to look at, can I grow less canola? And that's basically the only option you have at this point, unless the folks that are working really hard, and they are, at recovering markets, but also in developing new markets outside of China. So whenever we're dependent on one market, that again adds risk to the farm. So I know there's a lot of effort being put into developing new markets in other countries, and also about expanding internal crushing capacity so that you don't have to depend on expanding it. But that's a question that's really out of my wheelhouse, but it is certainly an impactful one.
So what are some of the other countries we're looking at possibly getting our products to market? Maybe India?
Yeah.
Maybe South Korea? What are some of the other
I don't know.
other countries?
This is not my area of expertise.
Just open it up,
But
right?
that's where you have these producer commissions that are really good at focusing in on that. So the Alberta Canola Producers Commission, the Canola Council of Canada, they've got experts in that field, and working with the major grain companies, you know, the pioneers and so on. And I can guarantee you that they're putting every effort forward in developing those markets.
You know, it's wonderful that Lethbridge College has a lot of the programs to get people interested in farming, the agriculture sector, you know, and actually putting their resources into that. But there are also a lot of farming families who are getting out of it altogether. They're saying, this isn't profitable anymore. Have you talked to some of those families and the reasons why they're getting out? Is it all just about the money right now, or what is it?
Yeah, you know,
the dedication. I mean, there's a lot of hard work, right?
It's a lot of factors, and I think it's a tough business. And you'll see too that there's been a new movement looking at mental health in the agricultural industry too. I personally think there could be people that are getting out of it because it's just not fun.
And it's burnout,
and
right?
It's burnout, it's stressful, and I have a small farm on my own, and when you have a wreck, you have a really big wreck, and you got to have a pretty tough stomach to deal with the stress and the magnitude of the risks. You know, you lose a bin of canola, all of a sudden that's a $100,000 loss, just like that. So, you know, I think those factors play in, but also, you know, can you make a go of it? I mean, financially, you have to be able to, you know, be able to service the debt and deal with the pressures there. But, you know, I do think that the industry will survive, and there are folks that are moving on, but there are folks that are thriving. So,
where's the biggest competition? Still from the States?
Probably ourselves. You know, it all depends. You know, at the farm unit, it's you're always your own biggest competition, and you know it could be everything from, you know, land competition from colonies. It could be, you know, everything is so very much specific. Did you own the land? Has the land been passed forward for generations? You know, do you have oil rights on your land? So it's pretty tough to come up with any single thing that's changing the industry. All that margins are tight. Farmers are being asked to do more than they ever did before. So it is more complex on every level, not just technology, but you know, you never used to have to market your crops, right? Back in the day, you just sold it and that was it. Now if you want to be successful, you have to learn to be a really great marketer. You have to look at
smart business person.
Yeah, smart business planning, risk management, you name it.
Wow. How about farmers that are also considering maybe more wind turbines or wind farms on their property?
Well, I think all of those off-farm revenue sources...
Does that help too?
Absolutely play a factor, because I see, you know, areas that have lots of oil wells or leases on that. There's not as much pressure for them to perform on the agricultural front when you've got revenue generated from other sources. So I think, you know, any off-farm source is going to help manage risk.
So
I have a full-time job to support my farming habit, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Your farming habit, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see the industry going maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, and how can the federal or provincial governments really help out farmers today?
Yeah, well, I think that as we see the technologies change in marketing, I think marketing has been the big drive recently. So can you grow a new crop and then direct market it yourself and cut out the middleman? So whenever you have a really unique opportunity there to be a price setter instead of a price taker, that's going to be the difference. We hear a lot about, you know, marketing tools like blockchain and things like that. I don't know if that's going to be fully developed in the next 5 years. 5 years goes by pretty quick, so I'm not going to expect a tremendous amount of change, but we always tend to underestimate the change in the short term too. So I think it's steady as we go. It's managing risk. It's dealing with the weather that we have.
How about taking off the carbon tax as well, off the natural gas for drying a lot of these grains, right?
Yeah, well, when you have we have a drought and then the rest of the province can't get their crops off. So it's totally different problems across the entire province. So that's when you talk about a government's role in trying to support that. It's pretty tough because we all have different problems. You know, we don't need grain dryers because we barely had a crop to grow. But I think things like that definitely make a difference. If we can have exemptions on carbon tax, I can't see how that's not going to hurt. I know even on the irrigation front, it's amazing how much the carbon tax adds to something as simple as that. And the reality is that, you know, margins are tight in agriculture. So unless you're, you know, either really, really big farm or you've carved out a really nice niche, those little differences can make or break an organization.
Ken Coles from Farming Smarter, thanks a lot for joining me in studio today.
Thanks for having me, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.